Top 7 Best CPU for GTX 1060 in 2022. Through extensive research and testing, I have put together the list of options that will meet the need of different types of buyers. So whether it's price, performance, or particular use, we have got you covered. For more information, I have put links of products in the description. Make sure to check it out. Like the video, comment, don't forget to subscribe, and let's get started. Number 7. AMD Ryzen 3 2200G. According to the reviews and the popularity of this CPU, we can claim with full confidence that this CPU is the best CPU for GTX 1060. From its price to the features of this processor, everything about this processor is simply exceptional. The 4 cores of this product are unlocked, which can boost up to provide a clock speed up to 3.7 GHz, moreover consisting of a ray-stealth cooler. This CPU provides the user with the ultimate thermal solutions. Number 6. Intel Core i3 8100. It's the last product on our list, and the Intel Core i3 8100 takes the position. Don't worry, I know Intel Core i3 processors are out of date and possibly do not pitch in the required gaming experience. But let me assure you of the fact that the 8th and 9th generation processors are high-key powerful. Be it on i3, IFIV, or iSpin, the processors will work fine. For this particular model, you get to hold the surfeit of features at a subsidized cost. The processor features 4 clock and 4 threads, which is more than enough to run mediocre/mid-tier games. Not to mention, the processor has a decent TDP and blesses you with a maximum boundary temperature of 100 degrees. When we compared the same processor with G4500, we found out that it was running 20% more efficiently, hence making it a golden cheap CPU for your GTX 1060. It's worth mentioning, the processor can easily run games like Assassin's Creed Origins and Shadow of the Tomb Raider. All in all, it's a decent go-to chipset if you do not care about overclocking. Number 5. Intel Pentium Gold G5400. Happy enough, Intel's here. Let me give a red flag for this processor, and it's nothing major. It's probably not best for gaming. The architecture used in the processor is not up to the mark and might cause future problems. It doesn't mean you will neglect the processor, just because it's not properly configured. Yes, don't worry, the processor will work efficiently with your GTX 1060 card. No issues with that. The processor belongs to the golden lineage and morphs into something humongous in terms of processing power. The processor is also aesthetic because of golden plating at the edges. No, it's not real gold. For the features, you get 2 cores, not sufficient for today's gaming standards, and 4 threads. Number 4. AMD Ryzen 5 1600. It's okay if you are wondering why AMD frequently appears on the list. It's a famous saying that if you are trying to give something to the world, give it in a way that leaves its imprints. Maybe AMD took the saying to the heart or too literally. In my opinion, AMD is above Intel, and believe me, I'm in no position to incite another AMD vs Intel war. But it is what it is. AMD Ryzen 5 1600 is a marvelous processor that has climbed the ranks. It has similar cores and threads to 2600, and it's mind-blowing. Although the card belongs to the 1st generation lineage, it's still competing against Intel 8th generation processors. This evidence speaks volumes, and I don't think, so I need to reiterate it. Anyways, the processor is powerful and can run almost any AA title to date. For example, on the benchmark results, you can play GTA 5 on ultra settings when paired up with GTX 1060. On top of that, the processor performed at its peak levels on games like Assassin's Creed when GTX 1060 was in action. Not to mention, the processor comes with a decent multiplier that enhances the overall performance of the chipset. There's a thing I want to address here, and it's the bizarre breakdown of the core system. Well, AMD Ryzen 5 1600 has a quad-core inlet, which indicates the trend of breaking cores into simpler pieces. For example, the quad-core of the AMD Ryzen 5 1600 is just 2 plus 2. That simply means it's a 6-core processor. I know it's a bit weird, but it shouldn't be a concern in the first place. Number 3. AMD Ryzen 2400G. It's AMD again. This time we will be focusing on an AMD Ryzen 2400G, another great processor for your GTX 1060. Although it has a greater base frequency than 2600, it still lacks relevant cache, cores, and threads. Nonetheless, the processor comes with amazing features that enable you to play games at fork without any issue. It was statistically proven that the processor overhauled the i3 8100. It was evident when the processor was checked against the i3 8100, and it turned out it's a greater chipset. Not to mention, if you are planning to set 2400G with GTX 1060, then it's for sure that the gaming performance will be seamless. From the recorded data, we came across that the processor outperformed many Intel processors on the Blender and pitched in top-notch quality performance. There was even a perceptible increase in calculation timings on games like Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Star Wars Battlefront Roman 2. The processor that the user stays on 100%, leading to higher production of FPS. You must be wondering how FPS generation is linked with the CPU. Well, my dear readers, it is. It's all about how fast your GPU pitches in data and how quickly your CPU addresses it. As long as both are working at 100%, there will be more FPS on the screen. For the overclocking process, yes, it's quite easy. You can overclock the base frequency of 3.6 GHz to 4.0 GHz by playing with the BIOS settings. When you are done meddling with the settings, make sure that there's a good cooler situated over the processor since it will decrease the increasing temperatures. Not to mention, the price tag of the 2400G is not that high. It's accessible and can be bought by any person in the world, making it another user-friendly chipset. Number 2. Intel Core i5 8400. No doubt, AMD processors have pushed Intel processors down the ranks, but it doesn't mean Intel Core processors are useless. Although it's a challenging time, Intel is still trying its best to propose valid and durable processors. Today, we will be discussing the Intel Core i5 8400 processor, which belongs to the 8th generation lineage. The processor is for gaming enthusiasts who are looking forward to fork gaming but don't care for the price tags. I'm not trying to be satirical or ridiculing Intel, but the Intel Core processors are indeed highly expensive. The model comes with 6 cores and 6 threads and somewhat performs averagely with the AMD 2600. Not to mention, the processor does not support any hyperthreading, which means your system might lag and freeze while multitasking. It's worth mentioning that the processor has more to offer when we keep aside the locked multiplier. You get a decent TDP and cooling solution on the processor, which makes the Intel Core i5 8400 worth it. On top of that, most of the games like Star Wars Jedi, The Fallen Order, and A Way Out were running flawlessly with 100% CPU usage. Did I mention that as long as the game uses 100% of the components, it will run efficiently? Well, if not, then yes, Intel Core i5 8400 ensures that the title consumes everything possible so you can experience seamless gaming. Additionally, since this processor is a non-K version, you can't overclock it. Intel processors have this differentiating thing that the K versions are only best suited for overclocking. If you are an overclocking enthusiast, then this processor might not be your shot. Number 1. AMD Ryzen 5 2600. Here we are talking about Zen architecture, which brings in a solid 100% efficient performance. It's affordable and can be easily paired up with your NVIDIA GTX 1060 card. Well, AMD Ryzen 5 2600 belongs to the 2nd generation processor lineage and is known for pitching in extraordinary calculation timings. It surpassed all of the mentioned products in the list because it is nothing but the use of a multi-threading concept that peaked the average working timing of a single core. It blesses you with 6 cores and 12 threads, which means now you can multitask without any freezes and lags. The recent reports calculated that the AMD Ryzen 5 2600 was equivalent to Core i7 8700K. It means that the 2nd generation AMD processor is beating an 8th generation processor of Intel. That's a significant defeat for Intel processors because not only are they charging you a river, but they also do not provide you with all the efficient cores and threads. It's worth mentioning that the Ryzen 5 2600 comes with a base clock of 3.4 GHz and a boost of 3.9 GHz on high gaming. Surprisingly, you can overrate your processor to a maximum of 4.0 GHz, increasing the performance by 2-folds. Not to mention, when you are overclocking your processor, you would need a working cooler, since the AMD processor produces heat at a larger rate because of multi-threading. So guys, that's all for the top 7 best CPU for GTX 1060 in 2022. The links of all products are given in the description, which are updated for the best prices. Subscribe our channel for more videos. We will meet next video. Till then, take care.